So UFC 329 is almost here. And I am really excited for this card. It's absolutely loaded from top to bottom. But really, it's about the main event. Because we have the return of the biggest superstar MMA has ever seen in Conor McGregor. A guy that is very much responsible for helping the sport get to where it is today. And he has been away from the game for 5 years now, coming off of a catastrophic leg injury that he suffered in the trilogy against Dustin Poirier. And now he finds himself in a 25-minute fight against Max Holloway, who outside of getting taken down and dominated by Charles Oliveira on the ground in his most recent performance, he has been looking better than ever. Looked really good until getting knocked out by Ilia Topuria. Looked amazing against Dustin Poirier in the trilogy. Looked really good against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. And ever since moving up to 155 pounds, we've just been seeing a different Max Holloway when it comes to the ability to really hurt guys. And it feels like for a dude that's been away and essentially 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the fight game for a while now, coming back against an active Holloway who's kind of reinvented himself over the past few years, this on paper feels like a disaster. But as we get closer to this fight, I actually find McGregor versus Holloway 2 to be very intriguing for a number of reasons, and we are going to break it all down and talk about it in this very video. We're going to talk about why I believe both guys are a big problem for each other at this point in their careers. We're going to talk about the layoff for Conor McGregor and what I think he's going to look like in his return and what we should expect. We're going to talk about this fight being at 170 pounds. Is that an advantage for Conor? Is it an advantage for Holloway? Or does it cancel out? Because I've heard a lot of different opinions on it, and I can't wait to talk about that. Then we're going to break down both fighters, their styles, and then I'm going to lay out some game plans and really the paths to victory for both fighters and how I think that these guys are going to approach this fight the second time around, and then I will end with my prediction and how I ultimately see this fight going out. But this fight's got me nerding out, man, because when you have Conor McGregor back in the game, it's just better for the sport. It's a different feel. The people that don't care about MMA all of a sudden care, right? It's a different deal when Conor is fighting. Can't wait for this fight. Let's rock and roll right into this thing, man. Let's talk about why I think that these guys are big problems for each other at this point in their career. And I know right off the rip, people are going to say, whoa, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that Conor, who's been inactive, is closing in on almost 40 years of age? He's just going to come back and be some sort of problem for Holloway at this point? The guy in Max Holloway who's been very active fighting elite fighters? Absolutely, Conor has some things that are going to be very troubling for Max in this fight, because I think the biggest problem Conor McGregor has against Max Holloway this time around, we're going to talk about it in a second, is also something where he has to be careful, because the biggest problem Max Holloway has against Conor McGregor this time around is today's Max Holloway exploits today's Conor McGregor's biggest weaknesses over 5 rounds. So when we talk about why would Max be troubling for Conor, if I was going to design a disastrous return for Conor McGregor, other than a guy like Oliveira who has a clear grappling advantage, has the ability to put Conor McGregor on his back, slow him down, fatigue him on the deck, and possibly submit him, that to me would be the ultimate disaster for Conor. But if I was going to find a fight to where it's going to be a striker's delight matchup, who's a fighter that we can build that would be troubling for Conor in a 25-minute fight? It would be Max Holloway. A guy that's known for being durable, having an outstanding gas tank, is hitting harder since moving up to the higher weight class. Has the gas tank, has the volume, has the output, and has really evolved his game over the years. And obviously, a guy that's looking for some revenge. Because years ago, when it was a baby Max Holloway, a tadpole Holloway, he fought Conor McGregor. And to be fair, that was also early in Conor's fighting career as well, especially in the UFC. Both guys have clearly evolved since then. And I think you could say Holloway's gotten a lot better. And I think you could also say that we don't really know what to expect from Conor. Do we expect him to look the way he did when he fought Holloway the first time? I don't know. I think that that'd be a little nuts to say. But I believe that if you were going to build a fighter to trouble a today's Conor when it comes to the striking, Holloway is a guy that could potentially be a disaster. Durability, pressure, cardio, some things that we have seen, particularly in the Diaz fights, things that gave Conor problems at a higher weight class, right? We know Max is an absolute dog, especially with 25 minutes to work with. But by the same token, I think today's Conor McGregor might not be the same guy. And the reason that I say might is because we don't know. Now, to say that he's going to be the guy that fought Eddie Alvarez 10 years ago or moved the way he did against Max the first time around, I just don't know how realistic that is, right? Being away from the game, like, how are you going to come back and look better than you did essentially in your prime? I mean, if you did, it'd be incredible. One of the most spectacular things that we've ever seen in the game. But I believe that we are in suspense here because we are unsure how Conor will look. This leaves a dangerous mystery. He's liable to come back and be flat-footed and get tired in 2 minutes and look like a complete shell of himself, and it all goes to shit and Holloway just blows the doors off of him. Of course that's an outcome. But really, what footage have we seen of Conor recently? What footage have we seen over the past few months? We don't know what Conor's really going to look like. Is he going to look really powerful and fast? Is he going to be back to his elusive ways? So while we might be able to sit up here and say, he's probably not going to look like he did 10 years ago, there's still that element of suspense. The way that Conor has kind of kept this camp very quiet, no footage, no tells of what we may be able to expect from him in this fight. And I think that in a way leaves a dangerous mystery for Max Holloway coming into this fight, and is one of the reasons that I am on the edge of my seat to see if a guy can come back after a layoff and look better than ever, like he's kind of saying that he will. Now, here are two big factors coming into this fight that I think are obviously things that we need to pay attention to, right? The layoff for Conor and coming off the injury, right? 5 years ago, Dustin Poirier, 2021, July 10th, a doctor's stoppage, right? Conor comes out guns blazing, landing some good shots. Poirier starts to turn up the heat a little bit with the boxing. McGregor steps back, the leg goes. We've all seen it. The reality is Conor McGregor, right? He beat Donald Cerrone in 40 seconds back in 2020, got knocked out by Poirier in the second fight where he was looking really good until he didn't. The calf kicks were a problem, slowed down. Poirier was able to KO him, then the injury. Was supposed to fight Michael Chandler in 24, never happened. And now here he is in 26. You've been away for all this time, and it's just hard to make up for the activity, man. You could be training, you could be feeling as good as you want, you can feel like $1,000,000. But when you get locked in that octagon against an active guy who's at the top of his game right now, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough. And obviously, like, I know Dominic Cruz is the guy that says ring rust isn't real, but I think when you're away for 5 years, that's something that can definitely be real. Now, is Conor going to go in there and really be feeling the moment and blink and be like, this is something that I haven't felt this in years, and just kind of crumbles? No, I don't think so whatsoever. I think Conor McGregor is going to come out here and act like nothing ever happened. I think he's going to make it a point to throw kicks with the leg that he injured. Right, and obviously when you talk about the injury, right, to that rear leg, that's going to be the plant leg where Conor's driving in with that left hand. So it's going to be interesting to see if we see any kind of hindrances in that aspect, but I don't think we will whatsoever. Right, but when you're coming off of a layoff and taking on an active guy, obviously there are the pros, which I mentioned before, which Conor was talking about recently. Has he been doing the best job taking care of his body? Probably not. But at the end of the day, he hasn't been in there taking the damage that Holloway has. He hasn't been preparing in these fight camps, which I think is a little bit of a disadvantage for sure, but there is a little bit of a freshness element, right? He's back, he's got the hunger, he's locked in, but Holloway's been locked in the whole time. Right, so I feel like the guy that's active, yes, Max has been taking damage, but Conor McGregor, the guy that's like, oh, well, I'm fresh as a daisy, like, I don't think he's been taking great care of his body, to be honest. Right, obviously, being on the sauce, recovering from the injury, I get it. Right, having some maybe drug issues going on, drinking, all those kinds of things. So it's not like Conor was out here locked in as a martial artist, training hard as can be for 5 years, and then he's just going to come in here. Like, he's been in and out, in and out, in and out, which I think is something that definitely could play a big impact coming into this. But the reality is, who does this favor at 170 pounds? I think it favors both guys. Right, I think that there's some advantages for both parties, right? Obviously, McGregor being away for so long and you know, being on the sauce and all these different things, his frame has changed. He's gotten a little bit bigger. He's going to have a little bit of a cut getting down to 170. He's competed in the weight class before. He understands the durability of a fighter at 170, even though Max is not a guy that's fought on 170 pounds. Conor is familiar with carrying that extra weight on, having to be in there for a full 5 rounds like he was against Diaz in their second fight. He's the guy that is going to have the physicality advantage, I believe. right? Obviously, we've seen that he looks quite a bit bigger. I think he's going to pack more of a punch. Now, the question is, what is the elusiveness going to look like? Because I find it hard to believe that Conor's just going to add on all this size over the years, and he's just going to be as light on his feet as he was back when he was competing at 155 pounds. Even when he fought Dustin Poirier in those last two fights the last time we saw him. Is he going to be as light on his feet? Because I don't think Conor, while he's fought at 170 before, I don't think that he has competed in the octagon as big as he is going to be against Max Holloway on the night July 11th. So for me, obviously I think the physicality and the power is going to be there for Conor at 170. He's competed there before, but I think that there's some advantages for Holloway as well. He doesn't have to drain himself with a weight cut, right? And we've seen Holloway ever since committing to the move to lightweight. He's looked big. He's looked strong. He dwarfed Dustin Poirier in the trilogy. Now, Charles Oliveira looked quite a bit bigger than him, but Max Holloway's really filled out at 155. Right, so in theory, that should help his gas tank. It should help his durability, right? And outside of getting knocked out by Elia, we've seen Max is as durable as they come, despite being dropped a few times since moving up because guys hit harder at 155. But I think that this plays to the advantage of both guys. But I do believe the edge can go to Conor McGregor here. The guy that's fought at this weight class, the guy that I think is going to be naturally bigger at this point in their careers. But I'm telling you right now, the people that are saying, well, this is at 170 and Conor's just going to bully him around for 25 minutes and take him down and use his size, I just don't know that that is the case. While I think that it leans in the direction of McGregor to favor in terms of it being at welterweight, I also think that there are some advantages for Holloway at this weight class, but some question marks. Is it going to slow Max down? Having on that extra size, is it going to, the volume going to dwindle a little bit? Is the speed going to deteriorate a little bit? Because if those things happen, that obviously are some things that are going to favor Conor and allow him to be able to get after Max Holloway a little bit easier. So the layoff from McGregor, obviously a big talking point coming in. You could say he's fresh. He hasn't been in these camps beating up his body to a degree in terms of the fighting game like Max Holloway has. But we all know how this game works. The guys that are active, the guys that are motivated and fully locked in like Holloway has been, I believe is an advantage over a guy in Conor who's going to sit out here and say, well, yeah, but I haven't been beating up my body, but I don't believe that you've been taking the best care of your body. And how consistently has Conor been training over these past several years? So some interesting factors coming into this. But when we talk about Conor McGregor, I mean, we all know what we're looking at. We're looking at a guy that in his prime is one of the most special fighters of all time, right? The way that Conor would move, his that long karate stance, the way that he would kind of blend it with a boxing style and the signature left hand that he's landed on basically everybody that he's ever fought. And we know that Conor McGregor, when he's at his best, it is walking you into the left hand. It's setting traps with the lead hand. It's probing with the jab. It's pawing that lead hand when you're an orthodox style of opponent, getting you to throw the right hand where he can slip off and counter. If you're a southpaw, he'll just snap right over the top of the jab with the left hand. That is the money-making shot of Conor McGregor. But I also think an unsung weapon that doesn't get talked about enough is that lead hand uppercut that Conor McGregor uses. We saw it in the Dustin Poirier second fight a lot, and he was ringing Dustin Poirier with that uppercut. He was ringing Nate Diaz with that uppercut, and it's something that he was also tagging Max Holloway with in their first fight. Right, so I think that the left hand and the uppercut are the two most dangerous hand weapons that McGregor uses when it comes to the boxing, right? We see him load up the rear uppercut a little bit, but really he uses the jab to probe you, to bait you, to get you to make a mistake, and that's what walks you into the left hand, and then he'll fire the left hand and then kind of shoot in and spring in with that lead hand jab / uppercut hybrid that you see at the bottom here that he landed beautifully, sending bolts through Dustin Poirier. But really, Conor's game is built around counter striking. Every time you see Conor fight, especially early, it's guns blazing. It's taking the center right away, throwing some sort of big strike, whether it's a spinning back kick, a head kick, a spinning wheel kick, or whatever it is to put you on notice right away to where you're like, whoa, we're in a fight here. And Conor tries to overwhelm you early to where you're not really thinking. You don't have a feel for the fight, and that's something that I think is going to be very important for him in this fight, to not allow Max Holloway to get into any kind of groove, which we'll talk about when we get into the paths to victory for Conor. But that's when he's at his best. Walking you down, backing you up to the fence, putting you behind that black line to where you start to feel kind of panicked, and then guys start to blitz in and they become very, very telegraphed in their movements to where that is when Conor walks you into his best shots. When he fought Eddie Alvarez, knew Eddie was a wrestler. When he fought Chad Mendes, knew these guys had power in their hands and were wrestlers. So what did he do? put them on their heels, buried that front kick to the midsection, taking some wind out of the sail, backing them up to where he could see the shots coming. He could also see those darting in boxing combos to where he could then slide out of range and counter with the left hand. And Conor's, arsenal is very dynamic, right? The high kick that he landed on Cerrone, he's got, as we've talked about, the left hand, the uppercuts. He's got knees, elbows, spinning attacks, and those shoulder strikes that he landed on Donald Cerrone in their fight was just spectacular, right? We've seen guys like John Jones, Demetrius Johnson use that throughout their careers, but Conor used it in a way that we've just never really seen. He was using it against Poirier in the second fight, right? Trapping the bicep and then just boom, just loading himself into it, dipping low and then shooting that shoulder up. And I think that's going to be a valuable weapon here against Max Holloway, trying to utilize that welterweight frame, trying to kind of, make him pay in the clinch. And that's the thing about Conor is, people talk about the left hand, but he has a lot of other weapons that he utilizes to not only damage you, but walk you into these traps to where he can find that left hand to be able to land that knockout shot. And Conor in his prime, distance control. He has some of the best distance management of all time, right? But what we've seen recently, especially in those Poirier fights, because those are the latest sample sizes we have, his distance management wasn't the same. He was flat-footed. He was more of a boxer, especially in the second fight, where he was walking forward and had no regard for calf kicks, right? And he got his lead leg destroyed. And then you saw in the trilogy, he went back to kind of, it looked like he watched old footage of himself and was trying to fight like an old Conor. It just kind of looked like a knockoff version of himself, right? Kind of more karate-like, bouncing in and out, right? We saw him kind of even up the stance, go a little bit more squared, switching stances to kill that calf kick because Poirier was a southpaw, so going a little bit more Thai-esque, right? So that's kind of the suspense aspect is, what is Conor's stance going to be? Right, I think that he should get back to his roots and have more of that karate boxing-based stance, right? Obviously, being a little bit bigger, it might be a little bit harder for him to kind of maintain that bounce and that elusiveness over the course of 25 minutes, especially with the inactivity. But I think Conor McGregor, when he was at his best, was when he was fighting Chad Mendes, when he was fighting Eddie Alvarez, and he was kind of mixing it up. He'd be long. You see some of the bouncing in and out here and there, but then he would kind of be a little bit more methodical moving forward, kind of getting in to those boxing-like stances and exchanges. And I believe that that's where Conor is going to look to get back. I think that's what he's going to look to get back to in this fight. Look to control distance. Look to not just come rushing in all the time. And that's what he was doing against Poirier. Just getting into the pocket, and it's like, that's not what made Conor great. What made him great was staying at the edge, staying at range, playing that long guard game, probing with the lead hand and setting you up and walking you into these shots, not crowding the space, right? And even though he was landing some good shots, that's where Dustin Poirier does his best work at a lot of the times, right? In the pocket. So just a lot of questionable decision-making from McGregor in terms of his approach. And I think in this fight, we're going to see him back in the karate stance. We're going to see him, a little bit, we're going to see him bladed, kind of playing the boxing game, high guard, moving forward, squaring up the stance, trying to give Holloway all sorts of different looks. But the power is still dangerous, right? At the end of the day, we could talk about inactivity. We could talk about this. We could talk about that. Conor McGregor is still going to not forget, he's not going to forget how to fight. And the fact that Holloway's a striker, I think, gives Conor some positivity coming into this. He's like, look, I don't think Holloway's going to out-grapple me. If I kind of dictate where this fight goes, at least early, right? So Conor, to me, is going to come in with a striking-heavy game plan. And he's got the power, right? So even though he hasn't been super active, you don't forget how to punch. So Conor's going to come in with power. Is the timing going to be the same? The movement? Those are all questions that we're going to have coming into this fight. I think it's hard to say that it's going to be what it was against Eddie Alvarez 10 years ago, but in these Poirier fights, even though he didn't look as good as he did in his prime, he was landing great shots in the second fight, was landing some good shots in the third fight. I think if Conor McGregor shows any glimpses of what we saw in those fights, he's going to be very, very dangerous in this fight against Holloway. We know the power is going to be there. We know that he's a very good striker. He's motivated, and the element of mystery. No one knows what to expect other than McGregor and his team. We haven't seen the footage. We don't know, and I think that is a part of this fight that makes it very, very interesting. But a lot of talking about how great Conor was, this is years ago, man. Fought Eddie Alvarez, it was 10 years ago. So to say that he's going to look like he did on that night, I feel like that's tough to say. So I anticipate we're going to see something that looks a little bit more like what we saw in the Poirier fights. We're going to see him having a little bit of a bounce early. He'll be a little bit flat-footed at times, really kind of giving Max these different looks with the stances. But I think he's going to come in throwing massive missiles from the start. The power hasn't went anywhere. I'm sure the timing is still going to be there to a degree, at least early. Conor is going to be very dangerous early on in this fight against Max Holloway. And when we talk about Max Holloway, I mean, this is one of the all-time great strikers, right? When we know what Holloway brings to the table, it's his pace and cardio. I mean, Holloway is one of these guys that he has no problem fighting a hard 25 minutes. He can fight that style of fight where he's going to walk you down like earlier in his featherweight days, move forward, land a ton of volume, take one to give 3, 4, 5, 6 shots, video game-like combinations. And the minute that Max stings you and senses you slowing down, that's when he starts to turn up the heat. That's when he starts to crank up the dial and turn it from 1 to 7 on the stove. And he's like, I'm going to start cooking you up. And that's when he starts finding his groove, right? And I feel like in this fight, it's going to be important for Holloway to set a pace that Conor's going to be very uncomfortable with, given we haven't seen him fight in a while. And a guy that's had some issues with the gas tank before, I think that's something that Conor is going to struggle with in this fight, and that's something that Holloway is going to look to exploit. But we know Holloway can fight a hard 25 minutes. He's got excellent volume, brilliant shot selection, right? And you've heard from Holloway before saying, listen, a lot of my combinations I learned from playing a video game. And you see that when he fights, right? He throws the jab, a right hand jab cross behind it, just boom, 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 boom. Probing with the jab, sticking and moving, switches stances, right? We've seen the evolution in his game throughout his career, right? And really, it kind of started after the Volkanovski fights. We saw it against Arnold Allen. We saw it a little bit against Yair, and especially since he's moved up to 55, it's a shame Max Holloway was not implementing a lot more of this earlier on in his career, because I feel like he would have taken a lot less damage. Not just having to be that guy that's ego fighting to a degree, walking forward with his hands up and having to be on the front foot the whole time, to where now you see Max kind of skating around the octagon. He'll be on the front foot. He'll be on the back foot. He'll be moving laterally, pulling you into shots. Right? And his shot selection, to me, has gotten better that way. He's a lot more patient. Instead of throwing punches and bunches all the time, he's just kind of coasting around on the back foot, waiting, and then boom, he'll drill a right hand to the body. Then he'll throw a left hook, right hand behind it. He's a lot more methodical with his shot selection, which in a way makes Holloway a lot more dangerous than the guy that used to fight earlier on in his featherweight days. And we all know, outside of being knocked out by Ilya, which I saw coming, unfortunately, for Max, that's the only time we've seen Max Holloway knocked out. We've seen him get hit with some big shots. He's one of the most durable fighters of all time, has one of the best chins of all time. Now, I've said this before. I believe Holloway is the most vulnerable he has been in his career at this point. We saw him get dropped against Gaethje. We saw Poirier drop him. I believe it was in round 2 in the trilogy. We saw Charles Oliveira buzz him with some good shots on the feet. And obviously, he's fighting the elite of the elite at 155. Guys that have power, guys that can clearly hurt you. But we've seen that Holloway, since getting knocked out by Ilya, the chin is still very good, but I feel like it has a little bit of a crack in it to where it's not the same that it used to be back in the day, given all the damage, all the miles that he has on the body, and given that Max is still young age-wise. In terms of fight years, I believe that he is a lot older than his actual age, which to me makes him a little bit vulnerable, moving up to welterweight to take on a guy like Conor that is going to be the biggest he's been in his career, that clearly has that power. But we know that this being at 170, I think theoretically that should also assist with the durability that Holloway brings to the table. And the other thing as well, in the countdown, Holloway's strength and conditioning coach was talking about it, speed. Being fast, being elusive, it's going to be very important for Holloway, and I'm hoping what we see on the night is not a guy that added on all this size to just be like, well, I'm at welterweight, let me add on all this weight, and it slows me down, and I hope that's not what Holloway does. Because, yes, you want to add on that size intelligently like he did the first time he moved up to fight Gaethje, where he looked fantastic. If he does that coming into this fight, I think he's going to have a speed advantage. He's going to be quicker, and that elusiveness is going to be very troubling for a Conor McGregor, and a guy that's been just unbelievably active. I mean, the 5 years that McGregor's been away, look at what Holloway's done. He's been fighting multiple times a year against the best opposition, man. Poirier, Gaethje, Oliveira, Arnold Allen, Ilia Topuria, Yair Rodriguez, the list goes on and on and on. So yes, he's in there, going through camps, putting miles on the body, changing weight classes, getting knocked out, getting buzzed, getting stunned, but he's in there getting the reps. And when you're on the sidelines, yes, you can sit down, you can watch the tape, you can watch the live rep, you can watch from a different eye, maybe a more analytical eye, and do your due diligence. But the way that you get better is doing those things, but also being active. The walk is not going to feel that big for Holloway, I don't think. And I know you're fighting McGregor in a rematch. We know a McGregor fight is a big deal, but this is more normal to Holloway at this point. He's been in there multiple times a year. So at the end of the day, yeah, McGregor's the big name, but this is going to feel, I think, just like another fight for Holloway. I think that he is going to be a lot more in control of his adrenaline and himself in the octagon come fight night, which I think is just a testament to the activity and also the evolution and the fight IQ that we've seen in the game of Max Holloway. He's not the same guy that fought Conor years ago. And Conor's not the same guy either. I think Conor hits harder. He's going to be bigger. But Holloway does a much better job of moving. Does a much better job on the back foot of skating around the octagon, pulling you into shots. And he's got more power, right? And I understand that this is at 170, but we've seen the power look good at 155. And is Conor, even though, he's gotten a little bit bigger, is he a true welterweight? That we have to find out. We got to see what that power looks like. If he goes out there and just smokes Holloway with a left hand and puts him away in the first round, and we're like, wow, he hits like a real welterweight. That's different. But Conor's a guy that's been a featherweight, lightweight, and we've seen him at welterweight before, but I just feel like it's very interesting coming into this fight, man, because we've seen Holloway at these lighter weight classes. His power has looked really good. How's he going to look at 170? I think he's going to look sharp. I think he's going to be a lot happier not having to really cut as much weight. I don't know how much of a cut he's going to have. If he does at all, it won't be much, I don't think. A guy that's been active, a guy that's been fighting the best guys in the world and dynamic fighters, right? Gaethje with power. Topuria with sensational boxing. Oliveira with nasty Muay Thai on the feet and a sensational ground game. Arnold Allen, who's a lightning fast southpaw who we're seeing is one of the elites in the featherweight division. Dustin Poirier, who maybe wasn't the same guy that fought McGregor in those fights, but was still in great shape and still had power and still looked good. So I think the difference you're going to see from Max this time around that we've seen throughout his career is the evolution in his game. Being okay to sit on the back foot, being okay to be the guy dancing around and not have to be the one dictating the pace, just walking forward, being that pressure, volume-based guy all the time. We see it as the fight starts to play out. Once he stings you and has you in trouble, that's when we see that old school Max start to come out. But I feel like his game, the way that he's became a lot more elusive on the back foot, and obviously his fight IQ, right? The thing with Max to me, yes, I said he's vulnerable, and he is very, very hittable. His defense to me tends to lack a little bit, but his IQ helps him. He understands that, look, his head movement isn't always the best, doesn't do the best job blocking and deflecting shots, but he fights behind the long guard. He utilizes his footwork to get him out of bad positions, and I think that that's going to be key for him in this fight once again, as we've seen since moving up. A harder hitter in Gaethje. What did Holloway do? Didn't exchange much in the pocket. Stayed at range, utilized darting combinations, utilized the speed, did the same thing against Poirier, did the same thing against Oliveira. And I know people are like, well, Oliveira just dominated him. Look at some of the striking that we saw from Holloway in that fight. He looked fast. He looked fast on the feet. So at the end of the day, I think Max Holloway is going to look very, very good coming into this fight. We know what both of these guys bring. Holloway, the pace, the pressure, newfound power in the higher weight classes, sitting on shots a lot better footwork and movement. And Conor McGregor, a guy that when he's at his best is one of the most dangerous and creative strikers that we have ever seen in the game. So how do I see Max Holloway winning this fight? I think that he needs to set a pace and utilize the cardio, because one of the big weaknesses that we've seen throughout Conor in his career is the gas tank. Now, I will say this. I do believe that narrative is a little bit blown out of proportion, right? Because if you look at the first fight against Nate Diaz, right, that's Conor basically getting pulled up multiple weight classes, right, to where he was expecting to fight a different opponent. Now he's up fighting a big Nate Diaz, who, yes, took it on short notice, but, is a durable guy. And, Conor was landing some big shots that put other guys away, and he didn't, gassed out, got submitted. Right, in the rematch, beating the heck out of Nate Diaz. Then he starts to slow down. Khabib Nurmagomedov, a dominant grappler. McGregor starts to slow down, but has a good third round. So, yes, we see McGregor slow down in these fights, and because he's very explosive and very elusive and a lot of movement, the first thing to usually go is the gas tank, which I feel like is a big reason that we've seen McGregor kind of get away from some of that bounciness to a degree. But I think Holloway, a guy that's been away for 5 years, and McGregor and the gas tank has been something that has been suspect at moments. I think that's something Max can capitalize on. And I think that that's basically what Max has been saying. Look, I'm going to drown him. I'm going to take him into deep waters, right? Early on, I think Max needs to be cautious, right? Attack the body, right? Conor's a guy that is one of these dudes where, especially recently, he comes out with like looking for a point to prove. Put you on his heel, put you on your heels. He's throwing these big shots and almost trying to show off in a way. And he's landing some good shots and stinging guys up. The minute you land a good shot on him, you see the demeanor start to shift a little bit. So Conor's going to come out, I think, all antsy, their adrenaline going. He's back in the limelight, and he's going to be happy to be back. But I think that that's where Holloway needs to be cautious and show some respect to Conor's power and that danger factor that he brings to the fight, especially early on, right? Rounds 1 and 2 are where McGregor is unquestionably at his most dangerous. And especially this being, at 170 pounds where he's familiar, as he's been saying, look, I'm going to come out unscathed. You're not going to lay a glove on me. And even if you do, I'm going to smile in your laugh in your face or whatever. So Conor's going to pressure him. So that's where Holloway's going to need to utilize his footwork, utilize the speed, hit and not get hit. And then once you start to feel McGregor slow down and you land a good shot on him, if you see a shift in that body language, that is where Holloway is going to start to try to drown McGregor with that pace and that cardio. But I don't think it's going to happen from the opening bell, right? That's where Conor's going to take the center, and Conor is very, very good on the front foot. Where Conor starts to struggle is when you put him on the back foot. Becomes a lot more predictable. That's where Dustin Poirier was having a lot of success, right? Especially in the trilogy, putting Conor on the back foot. You saw Conor kind of start to panic and look to kind of duck under and clinch up. Those are going to be areas where I think Max can capitalize. So the volume and the pressure, the pace that I think he will set as this fight starts to play out. Not to say that Max couldn't land a big shot early, because I think that that's what Max is going to be looking to do. Try to walk McGregor into something. Conor's going to take the center, pressure him, look to back him up to the fence, start to land those big shots. And that's where we've seen Max Holloway duck and chuck a good right hand, duck and chuck a good left hook. Right, and I feel like being cautious early, because that's where McGregor's at his most dangerous, just makes sense. You got 25 to work with. You're the active fighter. Attack the body, right? Take some of the wind out of the sail. Even though McGregor, he's going to have this big frame, poke some holes in it. Max Holloway does a great job of throwing that right hand to the body. And then what comes behind, a right hand to the body, you can set up a high kick. Then you can also bring the right hand upstairs, right? Holloway was doing such a great job against Poirier, who's a southpaw, right? Throwing that wide left hook, getting Poirier to kind of cover, and then boom, the right hand would come right down the middle, and he hurt him multiple times. And Holloway landed the right hand against McGregor in the first fight multiple times. So I think kicks, the jab, right, getting that cross going behind that left hook. And then we've seen, even though Max isn't the most dangerous kicker, he does a good job of mixing them up, throwing them to the leg, to the body, to the head. And even though they're not like super dangerous from Holloway, it's still something for McGregor to think about. And banging up that left hand, that left arm, is something that can take some of the sting away from the dangerous left hand of Conor McGregor. But we saw Holloway in the first fight. Even though it's an open stance battle, to where Conor's a southpaw, Max predominantly orthodox, Max still does a really good job of attacking the lead leg. He'll kind of blitz in with the right hand and then follow up with a left kick to the lead leg. That's where we've seen Conor have big issues as of late, right? Poirier, obviously a southpaw, so it's a bit easier. He was attacking the heck out of the lead leg of McGregor. That was the difference maker in the second fight. In the third fight, it started to give McGregor some problems, where you see him in this picture, he was reaching down. And anytime you see a guy reaching for a low kick over and over, that's when you start to bother him. That's where it's starting to bother them, and it's clearly something that is kind of getting in their head and they're worried about. They're feeling the sting in the lead leg, and I think if Holloway can start to attack the base of McGregor and not allow him to walk forward and just box and throw these dynamic kicks, that will serve Holloway very, very well in this fight. And the one thing that I believe could get Max into big trouble in this fight is if he panic throws on Conor. It's where Conor capitalizes the most, man. When Conor's backing you up and he's just kind of showing off and throwing all these techniques, obviously he's dangerous. But when he pressures you and he's controlling the lead hand and he's backing you up and he's throwing these shots and these kicks and kind of like scaring you a little bit, not letting you get a feel for the fight, and you start to back up and you get behind that black line, that's where a lot of guys shoot these naked takedowns, to where Conor can then sprawl easily and then counter with a good shot. It's where guys blitz in and kind of leave their chin out there to be countered, like Eddie Alvarez, like a Chad Mendes. And I know that Max Holloway is a much better, striker than them, but you get my point. Don't just chaotically blitz in just because McGregor is backing you up. That's where the footwork of Holloway is going to come into play. As long as he does not panic throw on McGregor, that is going to limit those amount of counter opportunities that Conor has, because that's what Conor loves to do. Throw out the jab, probe. You throw the backhand, it slips off, boom, here comes the left hand, right? You throw the jab, boom, he'll slip over, with the left hand and shoot that little lead uppercut, up the pipe. So if Holloway can survive, I don't want to say survive early, because I think that Max Holloway can do a ton of damage early, and I think that there's a chance where he could land a big shot on McGregor, and we've seen that McGregor, he's a great hammer, and whenever he has to be a nail, especially as of late, he's just not necessarily the same guy. But also McGregor, he's been coming into these fights, at least the last fight, with a lingering injury apparently. So I presume this is going to be a healthy McGregor, ready to go. I think he's going to walk down Max Holloway with a ton of confidence, and that's why it's going to be important for Max to be cautious early, avoid the big power, that early adrenaline that McGregor is going to have, and walk him into these shots. Counter the counter striker, right? When Holloway's leading the dance and overextending on shots and darting in and throwing those combos, there's going to be a time and a place. But early on, I think that that's where it's going to be at the most dangerous, because we've seen when guys rush in and they throw these combos, that's where McGregor is able to really find that left hand and find that money shot. But I think as this fight plays out, the pace, the cardio, the speed, and the footwork of Max is going to pay dividends. And I think mixing in the kicks and working that lead leg of McGregor is going to be something that could really trouble Conor, especially early, getting him worrying about that lead leg to where it takes some of that explosiveness away from his game, and especially in that left hand. But as long as Max doesn't panic throw, we've seen guys do that. Habib did a great job of that. McGregor would back him up, put him on his heels, and he's jabbing, and then he would drift away. Right, he would circle to his left, getting away from that left hand, right? Because McGregor will use those spinning techniques to kind of pull you into the left hand. Or if you're circling to the right, boom, he could throw the left hand around the guard. He could throw it down the middle. So I think Holloway going to the body, taking some wind out of the sail, mixing up the shot selection, being patient early, and then as this fight starts to fizzle out, I think that that's where Max's investment in the body and the lead leg of McGregor and that speed and footwork is going to show Conor this ain't the same dude that fought you back in 2013. And I think if Max does a lot of these things, which I think is going to be his plan, being speedy, Mr. Speedy Gonzalez Holloway in the heavier weight classes has given everybody on the feet a ton of problems. I expect it to be no different in this fight. And I think for Conor McGregor, it's one of those things where it's kind of that fine line, because you don't want to say, hey, come out here, rush like a bat out of hell and just get in the face of Holloway and essentially gas yourself out. But I feel like if Conor comes out and he's very tactical and patient, that may end up backfiring. Of course, his gas tank could be better, and it could be this version of McGregor to where it looked like he turned back the hands of time and the timing and the speed is back and all these things, and that could work out. I think Conor McGregor should have a bully mentality coming into this fight, because what we've seen when it comes to Max Holloway is Max is an avalanche. He has that snowballing effect to where early on it's like, okay, I'm getting touched. He lands a good shot, which he's done a better job of, moving up to the heavier weight classes, landing a big power shot early, but it's the snowball effect. Once you allow Max to start to find his distance, start to find his timing, it feels like the beginning of the end is near for you, and you're just going to be playing catch up the rest of the fight, which is why I think Conor, having the adrenaline, being excited to be back, being the guy that's fought in this weight class before, and I think is going to have the physicality advantage, put Holloway on notice right away. Back him up to the fence. Be aggressive. Throw a big head kick. Throw a big left hand. Whatever. Get into the clinch. Start to throw those shoulder strikes like you did against Donald Cerrone, right? Try to remind Holloway of what happened in that first fight. Even though that these guys are at different points in their careers, Conor can still hit hard, man. He still has very good striking. And I think if he can push Holloway up against the fence, take away some of that movement and elusiveness that Holloway brings to the table, and start to damage him up early, that would do wonders for McGregor. Knees to the body. Take some wind out of the sail of Max Holloway. Let some of those elbows go, right? To kind of slice open Max Holloway. Get the shoulder strikes going to damage the nose of Holloway. Take away, some of the, affect the breathing, right? Bust up the lips, swell up the face of Holloway to where over the course of 25, even though Holloway is the guy that probably has the gas tank advantage, you bust up the nose, you dice him up with some elbows, knee him to the body and bang him up a little bit. that could be something that could pay dividends for McGregor if he doesn't get that early knockout against Max Holloway, which knocking out Max Holloway early, it's just something we've never seen. Even when Topuria did it, the fight had to play out. A lot of time went by to where Ilya eventually found that knockout shot. But I think McGregor imposing his size, physicality in the clinch, even grappling early, right? I don't think McGregor's going to come in with a grapple-heavy game plan. I think if all fails on the feet, Holloway's tuning him up, speed-mogging him, that's where you'll see McGregor look to level change. But I don't think that's his path to victory, right? Because I think even if he does have grappling success, if Charles Oliveira's not submitting or getting Holloway out of there via groundwork, I don't think McGregor is. Right, again, styles make fights, you never know, but I just don't, to me, that's like the least likely outcome is McGregor winning this fight by submitting Holloway or controlling him on the deck for 25 minutes. And if McGregor does that, he takes away his most dangerous aspects, which is the power in his striking. So when I say the clinch and grappling, it's really pushing Holloway into the clinch, trying to bully him with the size, letting some dangerous elbow shots go in close, the shoulder strikes, knees to the body, looking to slice and dice Holloway to damage him up as much as possible, making it ugly really early in the fight where you still have energy and you can bust them up to where as the fight starts to play out, you can pick at those shots. You can pick at those areas that you've opened up on a very durable Max Holloway. So it's almost an investment in, if I don't get the early KO, I already have them damaged up to where I can pick at these areas that are already compromised on the dome of Holloway. But I think it's going to be important, don't rush. Right? Get in the clinch and bully him around and land some of those shots to create some damage early, but don't rush. Right? It feels like McGregor in a lot of these fights, especially against Poirier in the last two, he was rushing. Right? He would close the distance and then just immediately stay on the gas and be in boxing range and walk forward and have no respect for a leg kick. He would have no respect for the opponent's power, which I think is great at the start in this fight against Holloway. But if you don't land that big shot right away, don't just go all gas, no brakes trying to get the knockout. Bully him around a little bit, but don't stay foot on the gas like that for the entire first round like we've seen McGregor do time and time again, like he did in the first Nate Diaz fight, because if you don't get that guy out of there, then you start to get tired. Then you have 20 other minutes to work with outside of that first round, and that's where we've seen McGregor get in a ton of trouble. But I think if he bullies Holloway early, lands some good shots, has Max going, oh man, this dude's locked in. This is a motivated Conor McGregor, and Holloway's been saying, look, I'm preparing for a motivated McGregor. I'm preparing for a guy that's going to come in here ready to go. I think that is where Conor McGregor can capitalize early. Max Holloway, yes, he can land good shots early, but when you pressure Holloway, especially early in fights, when Poirier started to pressure him, when Oliveira pressured him like crazy, that is where you can get to Max Holloway. It's where you can get to him. That's the vulnerability in Holloway's game. Right? Obviously, the grappling against a super high-level guy like Charles, but when it comes to the striking, it's early pressure and heavy pressure against Holloway. Backing him up, not allowing him to be that methodical, let's go tit for tat, you go, I go, I'm going to coast around on the back foot, find my rhythm, and Conor can't let that happen. He can't let it happen, because if he does, he's going to get cooked by Holloway. I don't think he's going to let that happen, at least early. And he's going to pressure him, get in the clinch, land some of those damaging shots, right? I don't think he's necessarily going to rush. I think he's going to look to find the KO for sure, look to find the left hand, throw some different attacks at Holloway, get that uppercut going, because like I've said before, Max is hittable. Right, and he's gettable in the heavier weight classes, right? The guys hit harder, they can land these big shots, and Holloway, since getting knocked out by Topuria, I feel like there's a little bit of a crack in the durability, and we're going to have to see what his timing looks like. But one thing I know about Conor, even in those Poirier fights, the timing was still decent. The way he was landing the left hand, the way he was landing a lot of these shots, it's still there to a degree. It's still there to a degree. But again, like I said, we don't know what it's going to look like. I don't imagine it's going to look like he did in his prime per se, right? But Max makes mistakes defensively, right? Offensively, he doesn't really open himself up to being, where he's overextended to where he can rarely land a lot of these counter shots, which is kind of the good thing, unless he's going balls to the wall, blitzing in with combos. Max does make mistakes defensively. And I think that that's where if McGregor can throw that teep to the body, back kicks to the body, right? Drill the left hand to the body, step in, throw hooks to the body. We saw Topuria do a great job of putting water in the basement against Holloway in their fight, right? Ripping shots to the body. That brings those hands down because Holloway doesn't do a great job of deflecting body shots. He doesn't handle body shots very well, and a lot of guys don't really attack the body of Holloway, right? It's going to be tricky for Holloway or for McGregor to attack the lead leg of Holloway, right, when it comes to leg kicks. And that's not really McGregor's best attribute. Even when he was attacking the lead leg of Poirier, that's not McGregor's best weapon. Front kicks up the middle, batter the midsection, control the range, put Holloway on his heels, and try to pull him into that left hand. Pull him into your shots. Don't get overly aggressive to where Holloway can spring in and land that right hand like he was doing against Dustin Poirier, who's also a southpaw. Don't just sit on the back foot and try to be super methodical and tactical and try to prove a point by, out-dueling Holloway out in space. Take away the space early, damage him up, and then if you don't get that early KO or you're not bullying him around like you thought, those are going to be those opportunities to where I think McGregor can kind of sit out at range where Holloway's really banged up. He's going to start throwing some stuff. That's going to open Holloway up for McGregor to find those windows of opportunity. But I feel like the pressure of McGregor, the versatility in his shots, and the power that I think that he is going to have coming into this fight is all things that are going to be troubling for Max Holloway. And we know that left hand that Conor has, even to this day, no matter how inactive or active he is or isn't, that left hand, it can still land. We see the sparring footage even from a year ago. It lands on everybody. And if it lands on Holloway, a guy that we've seen cracked and hurt in a lot of fights recently, it could definitely cause him some issues. Pressure, front kicks, bully him in the clinch, mixing grappling if things aren't going well. But I really don't think the grappling is going to be a huge factor in this fight. And I think if McGregor does grapple early, that might affect him. Because for a guy that has a questionable gas tank to begin with, now being the biggest you've ever been coming into an actual fight in the octagon in McGregor, I feel like it's something that would wear on his gas tank and then take away that danger factor when it comes to the striking. And then you'd be standing in front of a seasoned Max Holloway who can start to get his game going with the volume and the pressure. But I think if McGregor wins this fight, it's going to have to be an early KO. I feel like that's where McGregor's going to be able to capitalize. So my prediction for this fight, I got to go Max Holloway. I think Max Holloway is going to win this fight, but I could see this fight going a number of ways. I think if Conor McGregor wins, it's an early KO. I really believe that Conor has the power at this point in his career, and he still has the ability to land a shot on anybody and put him away. I'm not saying that it's just a puncher's chance, because I think McGregor's actually going to come in very, very prepared. But when you're 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the game, that's one of the big pet peeves, especially in MMA, right? We've seen in football, right? 44-year-old Phillip Rivers came off the couch and was balling. But this is the fight game. This is different. This is MMA against an elite guy in Holloway who's gotten so much better since the first time these guys fought. Look how good Max has looked recently, man. And I feel like coming up to 170, like as long as it doesn't slow Max down and take away from the cardio, right? I feel like he's got the cardio advantage. He's got the output advantage. He's got, at this point, the experience over the past few years at least being, the active fighter. He's got, the volume. He's got precision. Right? And I feel like that's a huge advantage for him here. And he might be even more, that might help Max, being at 170, being a little bit more durable. A guy that seems like he's had a little bit of a crack in the armor, moving up, maybe that helps him. So I feel like if Max Holloway wins this fight, I don't think it's an early KO, right? I think it's possible for sure. McGregor overswings, he fatigues early, the gas tank is just completely shot after the first round, and all hell breaks loose, and the worst nightmare for McGregor happens. I could see Holloway getting an early KO. But I feel like Max is going to be very smart early. He's going to be cautious. He's going to let Conor come out and kind of do his thing and throw all these flashy shots and be feeling the moment, all excited to be back. Holloway's a smart fighter. He's not an ego fighter. He's going to stick and move. He's going to play it smart. I think that he's going to defend and move. I think he's going to get pinged around a little bit. I think McGregor's going to land some big shots. And again, it's going to be dangerous. The left hand's going to be whistling by. He's going to be mixing in the head kicks, and he's going to be throwing that uppercut. And it's obviously, McGregor could damage him up and find that shot to put him away. I think that's McGregor's best shot, to find a KO within the first 2 rounds. And if that doesn't happen, not to say McGregor couldn't surprise us and have the best gas tank of his career and pick apart Holloway, and Holloway slows down because he's up at welterweight, and McGregor's dragging him up to this weight class that Conor's familiar with, and I understand all of that. It's possible. Anything's possible, right? It's a fight. But realistically, I think McGregor needs a KO within the first 2, and if it doesn't happen, I think it's one of those things where Holloway's going to put him he's going to slow cook him. Touch, 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 move, play it safe early, utilize speed, utilize footwork, not panic throw on Conor to where that's going to open him up to being countered. Conor's going to get a little impatient. That's where he's going to start biting down, forgetting about some of the rangy sniper-like striking that he has, and he's going to try to crash the phone booth. He's going to try to crash Holloway up against the fence, and that's where Holloway's going to be able to start tagging him and opening up a lot more with his toolbox. And watch for that left hook that Holloway throws with the right hand down the middle. He landed it a lot against Dustin Poirier. But what has me worried for Max coming into this fight, I agree a little bit with what Conor said. I think Holloway's gotten a lot better, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the shots are the same. And yeah, the shots are the same for McGregor, But McGregor maybe has added in some new wrinkles. We have no footage on him for basically the past 5 years. We've seen him hitting pads and doing some other stuff, playing around sparring. But for real, we don't exactly know. We think we know based off of what we've seen before. So the mystery element, more on the side of McGregor. Obviously, a lot of film on Max. Like I said, he's gettable on the feet. Defensively, he's a little bit, that's one of the weaknesses I've been saying in his game. He takes a ton of damage. I feel like taking a ton of damage against a 170 locked-in McGregor, that could be disastrous for Max Holloway. I don't think he's going to rely on his chin in this fight. I think he's going to take some shots, but he's going to rely on footwork, movement, volume, pressure, and setting up the perfect shots to where eventually he can get a mid to late, TKO in this fight. Like a round 3 was my official prediction, TKO for Holloway. McGregor looks good early, pinging Holloway around. McGregor starts to slow down. Max starts to tag him a little bit. Conor's being a great hammer. Then he has to be the nail a little bit. He starts to slow down a little bit, starts to kind of fatigue. Now he's on the back foot. Holloway cracks him with a big shot, hurts him. And then up against the fence, following up with some shots, the referee has to step in and call a stop to the contest. That's how I see it going. Maybe Holloway just goes out there, picks apart McGregor. It'd be crazy if it's a back and forth war. That'd be crazy. That'd be actually honestly very impressive to see McGregor go a full 25. So I think anything's on the table. The most least likely outcome to me will be someone dominating the other in the grappling. I think it's a striking fight. I think the only way we see grappling is if someone's in trouble. Wouldn't even put it past Holloway to rock McGregor and walk him into some sort of submission, because even though Holloway got dominated by Oliveira, he still got a very good submission game as well. I'm excited for this fight. I think Max gets it done. The guy that's been active, he's been motivated the whole time, fighting the elite opposition. He's been locked in. Yes, seems gettable. The durability is a little bit of a concern at this point in his career. I think Max will look good at 170. I think that this is a competitive fight early to where Holloway starts to pull away, but I will never count out Conor McGregor, because if there's ever a guy that could be away all this time coming off a crazy injury that could come back and pull off the unthinkable, I would like to think that it would be a guy wired the way that Conor McGregor is.